Hey everyone, it's Alvaro. I am in Newark, New Jersey, right here at the Newark Public Library. Special day today. Duce Martinez and Hippie Morales have put together three icons, three pioneers of pretty much where we are right now as a culture, as a DJs, as music lovers, and have created and given us tools that we utilize even today to continue the passion and enjoy what it is that we're doing. Moulton, Alex Rosner, Caviano, tremendous history. I cannot wait to hear their stories. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm just really grateful to have this opportunity. So hopefully I'll get some videos and talk to some people about it, and I'll keep you guys posted. Incredible day, really excited to be here.
Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of Newark Public Library, I want to thank you all for joining us for today's program, The Pioneers, a live discussion on the early days of discotheques and disco music, presented by Hippie Morales and Duce Martinez. As always, before we start, I would like to start off by acknowledging the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Muncie Lenape First Nations on which we are learning, laboring, and organizing today. We also recognize the devastation and continued legacy of the transatlantic slave trade, which contributed to present-day systemic racism and oppression. We salute those who fight to quell those two fronts. For anyone joining us for the first time today, the James Brown African American Room was named in honor of the late James Library Brown, an influential librarian, poet, and activist who was instrumental in making sure that the library sought out and maintained resources, examining and celebrating the African American experience. His vision was also reflected through an array of rich programs, to which we add another today with our esteemed guests to the left of me. So, just to kick it off, because we're already a few hours ahead, an hour or so ahead, it's my honor to introduce tonight's host, himself a pioneer, Mr. Hippie Morales. It would take me far too long to get into all of his bona fides, but in short, I just want to say Hippie Morales has been DJing since the age of 15. Along with remixing and producing, he has held it down throughout a 40-plus year career. Hippie's innovative DJ skills led him to Abe's Disco, the precursor to the legendary Club Zanzibar. Yes. Became resident DJ on the club's opening night in 1979. During his time at Club Zanzibar, he won the prestigious Billboard Disco Forum 8 Award for the best DJ in the state of New Jersey. The last time those awards were handed out, so that title was held forever by Hippie Morales. Those bona fides also branched outside of New Jersey and has carried him throughout the state and internationally, and as you can see, he is still about that life. We thank this legend for putting us in conversation with the three legends to the left of him that he'll be introducing, and we're thankful to have you all here, so please give it up for Mr. Hippie Morales.
Thank you, Richard. You earned your $10 today.
I said three.
Thank you, folks. I'd like to thank the library, Newark Library, putting us together. Reggie and Dale have done all the hard work with me, along with Eric and the crew, setting up everything for the place. So I really appreciate what they did. You know, this is not an easy thing to do. Getting these three gentlemen together was not an easy thing to do. So we are glad and happy that this historic moment was able to happen.
Absolutely.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce them one at a time, give them a few minutes to introduce themselves and give a basic about themselves, and then we'll get into the details of how life went and how they got to where they got to. So my first guest is Mr. Caviano. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Caviano. Been doing this for I think over 50 years at this point. Started as a teenager, managing rock and roll bands to high schools and synagogues and what have you, and then got involved in meeting a production company called Tempe Productions, and they thought I was a candidate to help them with a record that they had at the time. It was called Switched on Bach by Wendy Carlos, and who utilized the first Moog synthesizer interpreting classical music. And I promoted it for them because I was just into helping with music. They took one of my bands and called the Mavericks and put out a record with them. And then I went on to meet one of the people involved, Sue Clark, who was a journalist for a young publication called Rolling Stone. And I wound up helping promote Rolling Stone to becoming a major publication. And this is, I don't know, 1970, give or take. And I wound up working for a bunch of music publications back then when rock and roll had all these publications called the Underground Press, what have you. And Rolling Stone became a major Queen magazine, Circus magazine. I even wound up working for Andy Warhol, who had a publication called Interview. And so after working with all these publications, I got to know some of the record companies because I was soliciting advertising. And I wound up getting a job offer at age 21 from a guy named Bob Small to work with London Records. In England, it's called British Decca. And I wound up being the publicity director. Keep in mind, I'm a high school dropout, and I wound up being the publicity director of a major record company, London Records, and we had artists like Al Green, Bloodstone, who had a big hit called Natural High, Tom Jones, Alvin Lee, ZZ Top. Just the list was endless. And after that, I moved on to doing management with a guy named Miles Copeland, who had a bunch of British bands. Wishbone Ash, Climax Blues Band, Al Stewart, who had a big record called Year of the Cat. But then things changed, and I saw something was happening in the clubs in Manhattan, in various places, like the Gallery, with a guy named Caviano, and the Sanctuary, which Alex knows, right? And I wound up saying, wow, there's something happening. There was a club in Manhattan called the Firehouse. Fire Island was big. And I said, wait a minute, you can break a record in the clubs here. So I wound up doing some independent projects at that point in time. And I wound up taking, for Tommy Mottola, who was managing All the Notes, and he had a record called Dr. Bizarre's Original Savannah Band. And I wound up promoting that, and it wound up going platinum. I wound up taking on a young lady for a manager called Ted Harless, and had a big hit with Turn the Beat Around with Vicky Sue Robinson. And then I was introduced to the main man that really started my whole thing going in the dance disco movement, was a guy named Henry Stone, and he ran TK Records. A lawyer, I'm sure maybe Tom knows, but Alan Grubin introduced me to Henry Stone, and he had major hits at that point. Actually, Henry had been around. He found James Brown and Ray Charles, and TK was down in Florida, and he developed a thing called the Miami Sound with big hits, KC and the Sunshine, George McRae, Rock Your Baby, and Fern Penny, and the list is endless. I wound up being TK's man in New York, and we had hit after hit after hit with TK. And just making a long story longer, at that point, I wound up being the vice president of TK, signed Voyage, Boris Bindi, we had Foxy, like I said, Greg Diamond, Star Cruiser, the list was endless. And at that point in time, this was about 2 years into it, I get a call from Mo Austin, who's the chairman of the board of Warner Brothers Records. And he knew that I was involved in promoting this music. The majors at this point were late, particularly Warner Brothers, and they did not know the power of the clubs, and they had an interest. So Mo Austin called Henry Stone and said, Henry, do you mind if I borrow Ray just for a minute to help me with a young artist named Madeline Keane? And she had a big record called Rough Diamond. I took the project on, well, that shouldn't have happened because at that point in time, I got an overture from Warner Brothers whereby they wanted me to go work for them. And they said, listen, would you like to run our dance music department? And they had a whole host of great artists. And I said to Mo, I came back to him after about a day or two, my lawyer, at that point I got a lawyer. And the lawyer said, listen, if they want you, you know what, tell them you want your own label. So I gave that overture to Mo Wilson, and he came back and said, sure, we'll give you your own label. And that's when the RFC label was born, with artists that I signed there, Change, and Luther Vandross, Gino Socio, and then with Warner Brothers, I was head of the dance music department there, and we had Ashford and Simpson with Valley Cure, Chaka Khan, Jordan Benson, Give Me the Night, Rod Stewart, we did a remix with Kim Burgess of Do You Think I'm Sexy, and so we just had hit after hit, and I think it's fair to say that the Change album was a good entree for Luther to get his own record deal with Epic and Never Too Much. So that's the long version. I can throw it to Tom and he would remix that story somehow, if you will. But that's the basics of the particular companies I work for.
Story.
Thank you, Now, my next gentleman, Mr. Alex Rosner. Some of you may not know, but the basics are, before he came to the scene, clubs had the speakers in front of the stage, like there was a concert going on. He said, we're going to put it in the four corners. That's what happened. So I'll let him take it from there. He'll tell you all the clubs he worked at, all he's done. If he forgets something, I'll fill it in for him. Mr. Alex Rosner.
Alex.
Good afternoon. I haven't that much to say about history. I was an audiophile. Audio was my hobby. And my wife encouraged me to go into business full time instead of just using it as a hobby. I took her advice, and I was there at the right time in the right place, which is New York. And that's where clubs began, in earnest. I suppose it started much before that, in basements of housing projects and places like that where people like to dance. But eventually, people decided that it was possible to make money and have a business where we can play records and people will come. The music at that time was had harmony in it. And it was that harmony in the music that brought harmony in the places that people were dancing. There was very little trouble in most places because the music kept it going. Later on, when the harmony of the music left, people didn't go dancing so much. They got distracted with computers and other things. But in those days, people went dancing, and it was important to have a decent sound system which could reproduce the music that was created in the studio. So I was just in the right place at the right time. The right quality, and people were willing to spend money to get it. Especially the reliability aspect, because the system had to be reliable. If you've ever been in a place where the sound system failed and there was a party going on, you know, it's more like coitus interruptus. So reliability was the key. I learned early on why it's so and how important it is to have reliability. I spent 60 years working in this field. I retired 2 years ago, and here I am.
This last gentleman, he hasn't done much, but we figured we'd include him in the group here. He has a little history I'm going to share with you. Hopefully he shares 1 or 2 songs he's done, I think, so far. And hopefully you'll be able to appreciate him because he is a true OG, one of our originals, Mr. Tom Moulton.
I actually don't know where to start. Usually when people ask me, they said I slept. That's the farthest I can remember going where I started. But my whole life has been music. That's all I cared about was music, and that's all I lived for was music. And I think it was a series of accidents that got me where I am. Because nothing was ever planned. It just, I was there at the right time. I mean, getting into the music business was basically an accident. And I kind of grew within it. And I love the music business. I love turning people on to music. I love promoting music. And then I got fed up with the music business because of the politics. And doing a lot of things that I had to do, which I didn't want to do because I didn't feel them. So I got out of that, and then I became the model Tom Moulton. And I like that because I didn't have to manipulate anybody. All I did was have to use my body, and I was just this physical thing. But I was still Tom Moulton, the person, but that other guy was the model, not me. So then after I gave up modeling, people used to stop and say, I know you, don't tell me. And I go, don't worry, I won't. And I grew the mustache so people would stop recognizing me. And then it so happened that the agency I was with, the booker said, do you know John White? And I go, no. And I said, well, I said, you mean that British guy? You know, he said, he's not British, he's just affected. And I didn't really know what that meant at the time. Anyway, he spoke with this British accent. He owned a place called the Motel out on Fire Island. And so they said, why don't you come out sometime? And I'd never been there, and I thought it would be a lot of fun. So I went there, and I was just so amazed to see so many black people. So many white people dancing to black music, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. And because I kind of grew up with that, liking black music, where not a lot of white kids liked it. I didn't grow up in the city. I grew up in a town called Schenectady, New York, which is right next to Albany. And so at this point, I asked, so liking what I liked and being a rebel that I am, I still liked it, and I didn't care what other people thought. Anyway, to get back to the music again, when I went out to Fire Island, I just watched how people danced, and I was so annoyed that this song was like 2 or 3 minutes long, and then all of a sudden this other song would come in, and people would walk off, and I could just see that they were all ready to, like, you know, express excitement for it. And I've always, you know, enjoyed music emotionally, and I always, believe me, I squeeze a song and get everything out of it I can. And when I listen to music, I want to be emotionally involved with it. I want to feel the rush of the music and the drama of the music. Yeah. But I want other people to feel that too. And I always felt like you're mixing for 8th graders, so you really have to explain everything in the song. You have to really dramatize the strings. So you don't have to be a college-educated person to understand it. Even a child could understand it. And I always liked that side of it because I watch people get off on it, and I go, well, now they know how I feel. So anyway, I thought I'd make this tape and see if I could make a perfect tape where you have person started on the dance floor. I have him for, I think, like it was, I think it was 45 minutes. I can't remember, I think it was 45 minutes. Anyway, I started with an Al Green song, and I ended up with a song called Mighty High. And I used every trick in the book, but anyway, it took me 80 hours to make that tape. I gave John the tape, and I saw him again, and I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Don't get up your day job." And I was so depressed. In fact, that's when I went out to the island to get the tape, and I sat at the ferry in front of a place called the boat, Sandpiper. And I'm sitting there waiting for the ferry, and this guy came out and said, "Are you okay?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm all right." "Did you lose your dog or something?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Why you're just so sad looking?" I said, "Well, you know," I explained to him and everything, and he said, "She's a bitch." I said, "Okay, all right." And I said, don't believe anything he says. He's just not a nice person." I said, "All right, okay." He says, "Look, I have the bar, my partner does the music. Why don't you just, if you want me to, I'll have him listen to the tape and play it and see what you think." He said, "Just write down your information on the tape and everything." I said, "All right, okay." So anyway, Friday night comes and I get a call about 11:45. "They hate it. They hate it." And I go, all right, you don't have to rub it in." So, I really felt, you know, like I thought I was on such a good thing, but no one understood because I played too much new music. Anyway, about early Sunday morning, about 12:30 in the morning, I get another phone call, and I'm hearing all this roaring. I hung up, and the phone rang again, the same thing. I finally let the phone off the hook. And then in the morning, I get the call again, and they go, "Oh, they love the tape." I said, "It must be somebody else's tape. I only gave you one tape." No, it's the same one." I said, "Well, why'd you play it again?" He said, "Because the DJ didn't show up, so we had to play the tape." And he said, "They loved it. They loved it." And I said, "Well, what was the problem?" He said, "Well, you know, when people come out to the island, they've had a hard, you know, work week, and they had to take the train out, and it's a pain in the ass because it's such a hassle. And they want familiarity. They don't want anything they don't know. They just want to relax and calm down. Then the next day they spend the day at the beach, and then they're ready to party, and then they're ready to hear anything new. And boy, with all that new stuff on there, they loved it. And that's how that whole thing started. And then they asked me to, you know, make a tape a week, and I went, "In your dreams." And he said, "Well, just the holidays." And I said, "Well, how many holidays are we talking about?" So he said, "Memorial Day, July 4th, and Labor Day." And I said, "All right, I'll try." And he said, "We'll give you $500 a tape." And I thought, wow, that's not bad. So I did that. It was really hard to do though, because I wanted it to be perfect. So anyway, during that time, a friend of mine named Gene Red was going to Philadelphia, and I worked with his father at King Records. So he said, "I'm going down to Philly. I'm going down to North Philly. I'm going to mix a tune I did. You want to come with me?" And I went, "No, not really." He said, "No, come down, it'll be fun." So I went down there, and he got a phone call. And he said, "Look, let me show you how to do this. You know, this is the pan, and this is each thing is on a track." And okay. I really didn't know much about it. So I was fooling with the knobs and everything. So he was gone almost an hour. So he came back and he said, "Let me hear what you got." And he said, "Oh, that sounds nice. You want a copy?" And I go, what do you mean? He said, I'll just make a small reel of it. And I said, okay. But anyway, it was a song called It Really Hurts Me Girl by the Car Stairs. Will you have that? Show you what I didn't know. Anyway, I really didn't know I ate from a hole in the ground. You know what I'm saying? I really didn't. I just didn't know. Anyway, I did that, and a few years later, the BBC comes over and they're doing Tom Moulton, and who did this and did that. And they walk into my apartment and said, this is the man who did the Car Stairs. And I got this blank look on my face, and I go, who are the Car Stairs? And then they told me the song. I said, oh my God, I think you got the wrong person. I had no idea what they were talking about. Oh, you know, it's a big Northern Soul record. And I was just shocked. I said, I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about.
He said, oh, let me get out my cassette, right?
Yeah, and sure enough, he starts playing. I went, they released that? I didn't even know what I was doing. But it became a hit. So I was really shocked over that. Anyway, again, an accident. Same thing, going down to Philadelphia. I mean, I really wasn't that good at what I was doing, but I knew what I wanted to hear. And first one I did there was I Just Can't Say Goodbye by the Philly Devotions. And the first thing, I went to the studio, they had it all set up, and I walked in Studio A, and here's Joe Tarshiglione, Terry Chippett's manager, and Carl Ferrullo. You were like three of the top engineers there, and all I hear is, so you're from New York? And I go, yeah. And, but I did this before. I said, yeah, like thinking there was somebody behind me. Anyway, I said, okay, hear this sound? Yes, that's not what I want. So I started, I said, do you mind if I touch the knobs? He said, I wanted this, I wanted that, I want to do this, I want to do that. And they kind of looked at me in an odd way, and yet we managed to do it. Then I went back again, and I worked on some Philly records, and I worked from records that weren't from Philadelphia. And finally I said, look, I can't keep coming down to Philadelphia all the time. Is there any way, like, I can book a year at a time? So every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Studio A would be mine at night. Well, they didn't like that idea, and I said, well, then what am I going to do? I got to do something. I can't keep coming down there all the time. So anyway, for 11 years, I had Studio A was mine from 7 o'clock at night to 7 o'clock in the morning. So I was thrilled with that. All during that time, it was like a big dream. I mean, to do all these great songs and people letting you do whatever you wanted to. And at first they didn't like the idea, but then when they started to hit and started to sell, well then they looked at it differently. And I felt that was the objective side of a record producer. In other words, record producers, when they go in, they cut a basic track, and they do the overdubs, and they do the vocals, and then there might be additional sweetenings, you know, strings and horns, things like that. So you've heard it 1,000 times. I go in there, I've never heard it before, and, you know, this works, that doesn't, you know. And so I thought, I'm in this nice little niche here where, you know, I can be the objective side of the producer. In other words, I can get all the good stuff out of it without having heard it to death. And that was fine. Then Harry Chittens called me in his office one day. He says, Tom, why don't you do anything for Gamble? And I said, for what? Gamble's got his stuff, I got mine. No, we like to keep things in the family. And I went, Oh, now I remember the family. I like that idea. So anyway, he gave me 3 acetates of albums that were in the can. They weren't scheduled for release yet. And I listened to, I think it was Harold Melvin and Blue Notes. I forget what the other one was, and then the other one was People's Choice. So I liked this one song by People's Choice, and I said I'd like to do that one. And yeah, but there's no vocals. I said, yeah, but that's the song I want to do. And the other reason I wanted to do it was because people, I told people I kept going to Philadelphia all the time, and a number of black people said to me, oh, you lighting up all the black music. And I really got offended over that. All the strings and horns on all the soul records. And I said, I didn't produce it, I'm only mixing them. And I thought, well, let me see if I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. So anyway, the song I picked was a song called Do It Any Way You Wanna. And so I mixed it over at 309, which Campbell was shocked at because that was his studio. Well, the studio had a bass heavy sound, and I needed a heavy bass for that song. And I started the record, I wanted a slap. I wanted that whack. And Kenny hated it when I did it. He said, it sounds horrible. He says, Kenny, when you slap somebody over the face, I said, you better have something to back it up with. And went, whack! Dun, 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 dun. And I said, this thing, and all I did, I sped it up a little bit so when you're walking down the street with a boombox, get the hell out of my way. I mean, I wanted it so aggressive. And I knew it was going to be a smash. I just knew it because it just rattled my bones. And Kenny said, no, I don't like it. So I remixed it in Studio A and it sounded horrible. I mean, it had no guts. So anyway, I said, Kenny, please just put it out. Trust me on this one. So we put it out, and sure enough, right up there it went. And I mean, to this day, every time I hear that, when you hear that whack, may I have your attention, please? He gets advertised every time. But he thought that was the strangest thing to do to that record. And then I was waiting for somebody to come up to me and say, I whited up that record. But I mean, that was a thrill to do that record, it really was. But then, like, the thrill of my life was working with the Tramps. I mean, that was, my God, that was like dying and going to heaven. I still say that's the greatest moments of my life was working on the Tramps because it was just pure joy to hear Jimmy sing. Look out, help me somebody. Lord have mercy. I mean, saying Adams at every song, who cared? I mean, it just made you feel so good inside when you hear him sing. And I just wanted to have that relay to everybody else. And of course, in New York, I didn't have any problem. Everybody loved the Tramps in New York, so I was so happy. So anyway, I didn't mean to carry on so long, but I mean, it's just been a thrill to be in this business and being able to, do a good job of what you do, and then have other people tell you what a good job you did. So I like that.
Thank you, man. So I'm going to start asking a basic question to all of you, just because I'm curious. Ray, what was the first club you ever went to?
I talked about, I think I mentioned it earlier. There was a club, actually it wasn't a club, it was an old firehouse in downtown, not far from where Nicky Ciano was at the gallery. And this is, there was a sanctuary, but I didn't get to go to the sanctuary. Alex was involved in the sound system there with Francis Russell, right? And from what I understand, that was an incredible club. But the gay revolution in the West Village, because I was brought up literally in that area, these young gay kids were going to the firehouse, and that's where I got my first exposure. And then there was another club that was called the 10th Floor, which was a private club, membership club that you went to. That was also, and then what Tom was talking about, I was living in the Pines for many summers and got exposure to some of the DJs that went through there, Larry Sanders and other Bobby DJ, if I'm not mistaken. So those were the clubs that I was exposed to. But Alex was involved even in the earlier stages with the Sanctuary, and one person that we have to mention if we're talking about clubs and the beginning of the club disco scene. And he didn't mix records per se, he programmed records, and his name was David Mancuso. Alex, what can you say about the Loft? You were involved with that system, and David.
The Loft was one of the early systems I did.
Right.
Actually, David Mancuso, he was the owner of the place and he was the DJ. And he did the system himself, all by himself. It was quite respectable. And all I did is I helped him. His ideas I took and I built them. So I was like a helper robber. I kind of a helper robber, and he was the creative mind. And it was, his concept was to create an atmosphere that was really democratic, where people could mix, really mix from all walks of life. And every variation of a person that you could think of was there. And what they all had in common was the music. So he played the right music, he invited everybody, nobody was excluded. And it was a successful concept that people tried to copy, not always successful. The irony is that he's dead, but his concept goes on, and that Loft group of people still throw parties in New York 4 times a year. So he has something going.
Alex, also a question, because I know he told you to set up the Twitter array a certain way.
Yeah. That's a huge story. David had ideas and you couldn't say no to him. He was very hard to say no. One of those people. So he said to me, look, I want you to build me a tweeter array. 4 tweeters, each facing north, south, east, and west. And I said, what tweeter arrays? Oh, answer. He said, no, 8. 1 per channel. 4 per channel. 1 array per channel. I said, David, you're going to kill people with high frequencies. They're not going to be happy. He said, never mind what you think. Just do it. So I did it, and it was terrific. It was a great idea. And it became the standard of every club in the world. People use that just everywhere. It was terrific. And
I think not the same, but Richard Long emulated that too.
yeah, he copied it. Yeah, he copied it. Yeah.
Oh, I love the story, Rick, Alex. Tell them about this club that I guess became popular at some point, and how you helped Richard Long get the job.
Oh yeah. Studio 54. Yeah. What happened is I did a job for a guy. His name was John Addison. He was a white man from South Africa that come to America to make good. And he built the club. He had money, so he built the club. And somehow things came where I redid it. Somebody else had done it. I redid it. And it was a successful club. And one night he calls me at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he says to me, I gotta talk to you. I got an important idea. I can't wait. I said, John, give me a break. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I gotta talk to you. I said, John, please, this is not the right time. Please let it go, let's talk tomorrow. And I hung up the phone. That was a big mistake. So, his feelings were hurt. The next day, he got a call from a lady who was working on behalf of a man that was going to build the Studio 54. And she asked John for a recommendation for a sound man. And John decided that rather than me, he's going to recommend the guy whose system I just redid, which was Richard Long. So Richard Long got the recommendation, and I lost the job. And that was the biggest job that Richard ever got. He became world famous. It was a model. It was a model for other clubs all over the world. And so, I didn't miss it.
Well, I'll tell you something, Alex. I went to Starship Discovery, and that was the first time I heard a system that I fell in love with, the layout. All the hanging speakers and the bass on the floor and the tweeters. It was amazing. That was one of the best clubs ever built, period, sound system.
Okay.
And of course, a lot of people don't know, he did the loft, he did the gallery. I worked at the Limelight, that you also did. I worked there. Yeah, he did a lot of clubs. They still, a long time.
The original Limelight on 7th Avenue, right? Not the Limelight, not the one that was a church.
Right. The one downtown, on 7th Avenue South.
Okay. So Tom, I'm gonna ask you about this song, and then I'm gonna ask you a little bit about the story behind this, how you got this mix, and how you ended up doing it.
Yeah, Dr. Love, boy. Anyway, how did I get the mix? Ken Carey called me in the office. I was starting to do a lot of work for Salso by then. And he played me some of the tracks. And all I had to hear was da-da-da-da-da. I said, oh shit. I said, you know, that's what I call the carrot. I always refer to that as the carrot. And you know, and I'm just a dumb donkey that wants to grab it and I get sucked right in. But that's what it takes, otherwise it's a job. So anyway, I feel like I got a little flashlight and I'm exploring in a cave when I get a song like that. So I'm saying, oh my God, listen to this, listen to that. How can I make this work with that? I mean, I just love, when I heard that, I just said, oh my God. And so I went down to Philadelphia. And Norman Harris, who produced it, it was a good friend of mine, the great Norman Harris.
Did you still look like that?
Huh?
Did you still look like that?
Yeah, oh yeah, I sure did. That was first choice. Yeah. Anyway, Earl, as much as I love Earl, when he changes his pattern, he'll sometimes slow down a little bit. And when I say that, I don't mean that in a negative way, because these songs weren't designed to go through this far and then go back to the beginning and repeat it. And so when it went to the change, I wanted to go back to that part. And I was so frustrated. I just said, I'm not going to say exactly, I said, gee damn it, I don't know what the F is going on. And I got these terrible, like lightning bolts down my arms. And I just stopped for a minute. And I took a step and everything shut down. And I went, I don't know what's going on here. And then I took another step, the same thing. And I said, and then I just turned around. I said, look, I was working with Arthur stopped me then. I said, Arthur, look, let's try to finish this in pieces. So I said, look, I'm going to vary speed the multi-track because I can't deal with this. So anyway, I said, look, I'll tell you, just do this. I'll do the vary speed. So anyway, when it got back to the groove of the song, I hit it a little faster, and then I backed it down a little bit again, so the song really wouldn't speed up. So anyway, after we pieced it all together, I listened to it, I said, it's perfect, works for me. So I said, now can you take me to the hospital, emergency room? And they took me over to Hannon Hospital, and I go to the emergency room. The emergency room doctor said, so what's the matter? I told him what happened. He says, we had like a mild heart attack. He said, your heart's on a rhythm, so we have to we put it back in the right rhythm. And he said, how long ago this happened? I go, about 6 hours ago. My God, where did you come from? I said, 12th and Ray Street. He said, are you out of your effing mind? You could have died from this thing. And I said it was important that I finish Dr. Love. I said, what goes with the hell is Dr. Love? Song. Anyway, because I wasn't going to, believe me, I wasn't going to die without finishing that song. So, anyway, I went over to the Reading, thank God I finally remember the name of it. This is like a year later, I'm in the Reading Terminal, which is a couple blocks from Sigma. And it's a terminal where the Amish sell all their food and goods, and it's a great place to have lunch. It's a wonderful place. And I saw that doctor there, and I went, hi doctor, it's a long time. He said, hey, you did the right thing. I love Dr. Love. So I did something right. I just got the biggest kick out of that. So that's the Dr. Love story. And Norman, oh by the way, Norman couldn't stand it. He didn't like what I did to it. The album came out, and everybody complained that my version wasn't on the album, because mine was the single. And then on the CD, and then finally it became a top 5 record in the UK too, that version. I just was, and you know, of all the songs I've ever done, that's the one, I said, I did this going for, I did more. Oh yeah, I love that. And then I mentioned, I did Instant Replay. Oh yeah, that was a good record. And I said, I did Dr. Love. You did Dr. Love? And everybody says the same thing. They always react to that song, and I can understand why. It's just, there's something, the song has magic to it. It really does. I'm very proud of that record.
Yeah, I can tell you that's a Newark classic. And then I'm going to ask you about this song here, which is also a Newark classic. How you guys signed?
What song is that?
This record, yeah, this is playing smack dab in the middle. This was, a lot of the records that I was involved in, oddly enough, I wasn't that entrenched in the Philadelphia experience.
Can you lower the volume a little bit to get feedback here? Anybody back there? No? Okay.
So I wasn't that involved in the Philadelphia experience. At TK, we were involved in the TK Sound, which was George McCrae, Rock Your Baby, Casey and the Sunshine Band, and those type of artists. And then when I went to Warner Brothers, sometimes I wanted to emulate sounds that were popular, like in Atlantic, they were experiencing with Cerrone, the Euro disco sound, and then that was enormous. Cerrone to me is one of the masters of the Euro disco sound. Don Ray is important, and what have you. So when I was the reason I'm saying that is that I sometimes was, because I'm a former promo man who became an A&R man, and therefore I was in the clubs 6 days a week, hearing what was happening on the dance floor. And so sometimes I would say, well, I want to respond to this sound that's popular. So Janice McLean was my answer to the Philadelphia sound. Larry Levan mixed the record. And I think Tom was telling me you had a B-side that Janice McLean that you worked on or wanted to work on. And so that was my answer to the Philadelphia sound. And then with the Euro disco sound, my answer to that was, because other labels were being popular with Euro disco, Casablanca with Donna Summer, and Alex Constantinos with Love and Kisses, which was huge, what have you. So at TK, which was the funky Miami label, I signed an album, Voyage, which had a big hit with Souvenirs, and it was huge. And then I signed another guy named Boris Vidny, who was this Russian, who did USA European Connection, and whatever. And so Janice McLean, getting back to that was my Philadelphia answer, and it was popular. It was a garage classic. It was also a Zanzibar classic. And there were other records that I did that were in that progressive sound. I did when I was at Atlantic Records with RFC Atlantic. I signed Lace, and that was, I don't know if you have that record. That was a popular record. Oh yeah. Now, when you heard that, so that was another garage classic and a Zanzibar classic. Zanzibar and the garage and Better Days kind of represented a certain sound that was progressive and soulful and what have you. Notwithstanding that, I would have to say that my 3 favorite records that I've ever been signed, not just promoted, was Voyage, Change with the Global Club album, and Love is Holiday and Searching. And then also out of Montreal, Gino Socio with Dancer and Try It Out. Those are my favorite records. Notwithstanding, the records that I promoted at Warner Brothers, Found the Cure, which was huge. I think you did a remix on Found the Cure, did you not, Tom?
Oh, yeah.
Right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It was more of a layered intro, if I remember correctly, from the original. That I think Jimmy Simpson did, if I'm not mistaken. But that was the #1 dance record. It was huge. What have you. But we're talking about the beginning days of the club scene here. By the way, I would be remiss in not mentioning one of the people that helped me when I saw this, Rock the Boat was selling without even airplay. Remember Hughes Corporation, Van McCoy, The Hustle, and Brash Construction. All these records were just tremendous. And there was a gentleman who was working at 20th Century Records. You probably know him. He had the Ritchie family in Brazil and Barry White, his name is Billy Smith. And Billy would take me around and he introduced me to all the clubs, and I'm going, wait a minute, I'm going to take advantage of this situation and create a network, not only here in New York, but in Miami, in Chicago, what have you. And I'd have to say the 2 DJs that I utilized for the mixing records was, and I thought they were very talented, was Jim Burgess and Larry Levan. Both were unfortunately passed away. So, it's just the stories about the club scene and what has transpired. And you got to understand the garage wound up being a temple. And I think that Zanzibar was picking up with the same crowd. I hired a gentleman who was a DJ at Zanzibar. His name was Larry Patterson.
Yeah.
So he certainly, I used to go, was it the Lincoln Hotel? Is that what that was?
I'd like to add something to that 20th century label discussion. Is Bobby DJ was out in California and he saw Russ Reagan ran the 20th century. And to get a test pressing of very white Levan living it out that had love steam on it. There was only one copy they had, and he had it. And boy, he made use of that record. I mean, I never seen anybody, people dying to get a record more than Love Sting. That thing drove everybody crazy, and Bobby was the only one who had it.
Unbelievable.
Well, this has been a great conversation. We're going to open it up for the audience. If you have any questions, I hope you appreciate what you've had so far. I can talk to these gentlemen, like I said, on my Facebook page, 3 hours with just one. The fact that we have all three, I feel very privileged and honored to be here.
Thank you.
We got a mic.
All right, folks, if anyone has questions, please raise your hand and I will bring the mic over to you.
Gentlemen right here, what made you decide to put the speakers in all four corners?
The question is, what made me decide to put speakers in all four corners?
Yes.
I'll tell you exactly. The first club that I did was at the World's Fair in 1965. And I decided to put all the speakers in front, thinking to simulate an orchestra. Seems reasonable, right? I always heard big bands playing, I would dance in front. And I thought to simulate an orchestra, put the speakers behind the curtain so people couldn't tell that it was speakers. I was hoping that they would think that it was an orchestra playing there. I did that. And the sound was beautiful, but it wasn't realistic. So when people danced, they didn't have the feeling that it was, there was an orchestra there at all. And I considered it a failure, even though it was a success. People came to the Carnival Pavilion at the World's Fair. And that made me feel that that wasn't the right thing to do. The second job I did was the Canada Pavilion at the World's Fair. And I did the same mistake because I had no option. It was a room very much like this, with a stage just like this, maybe 2 inches higher. And the room ended the same size, just about like this. I put the speakers into the stage. Put them in the guy wanted invisible speakers, he didn't want to see them. So I did, I put 4 speakers in there. And again, it was all in front. And that was the second time that it was a failure. I considered it a failure. It just didn't get people excited. So I said, okay. To get people excited, they gotta be in the music. Not facing the music, but in the music. I know this isn't like the orchestras did the big band era, but the big band era is dead. Where are the big bands now? They're not here anymore. So, next job I did, I put 4 speakers in the corner of the room and a big bass speaker in the middle. And it worked like a charm. That was how I got the idea.
Hey, my name is Alvaro. I just want to personally say that you guys, I don't know if you realize how influential you have into this whole industry, from record playing to mixing to just understanding new artists. So for me personally, this is a dream come true for me to hear it from you guys. And I hope that the youth realizes exactly what you're leaving behind for them to move forward with. But Ray, there was an interview that I read where Frankie Crocker also played a big role in what you were doing as far as promoting music and taking him to the Paradise Garage, where now he took that form and expanded into the radio for everybody. Can you give us a little background on that?
Well, he don't turn off your mic, just leave it on like this? Yeah, you can hear me, right? No.
It's on. Yeah, it's on.
Now it's on. Yeah. Now it's on. Right. Okay, don't turn it off. Keep it on. glad you brought his name up. He has to be single-handedly. He's from Buffalo. He started up in Buffalo and worked on the AM station up there, WUFO. And he was, to say that he was a pioneer of not just radio, but he had an incredible ear, and he put together the so-called urban contemporary sound, and the WBLS, the best looking sound. And he got, the reason why WBLS wound up being the #1 station in New York is that he got to combine both the black audience and the Caucasian audience, if you will, for lack of a better term, to like black music. And as Tom was talking about, that he helped white people like Dollar Sign.
He brought class to black radio.
Without question. And yes, it is true that I would take, and I gotta be honest with you, some people I think resented me for the fact that I would go to the garage, and I was very close with Larry. He mixed a lot of my records. That's all well and good. And I would take Frankie on any given Friday night or Saturday night to the club, and I would bring my test pressings and my acetates. I mean, I brought Dancer as an acetate to the club. And, you know, Larry, if you liked the record, he would play the record for an hour. And get away with it, too. And there's some nights that Larry wasn't so good, but that's another conversation. But basically, WBLS at a certain point, when I brought Frankie up there, and the Dancer was played that night, and it was on the air on Monday. And promotion people, the traditional promotion people, did not understand how a record could be brought to a club as a test pressing and be programmed and be on the air on Monday. And yes, Tom was right. He had in class by picking the right records, and guys like me, with modesty aside, and who had good credibility of picking the hits. That's why I got my own label, because I picked hits and I promoted hits. I didn't become the promotion man of the year 4 years in a row for no reason. And with Frankie, I had that credibility. And it was written by Tim Morris in the book that BLS was being programmed right out of the booth. Francois K, and if everybody knows that name, was quoted as saying that when Ray Caviano and Frankie was in the booth, they were the big dogs, and they didn't like that. But I'm sorry. Too bad. I had good music, and I was priding myself in having good ears, and my promotion skills wound up helping me be a good A&R man. Just like Tom had the ears, he would tell Ken Carey or whoever, trust me on this one. And there's a reason why he said that, because he knew what the fuck he was doing. Pardon my French.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I have a question for Alex. Everyone talks about the speaker side. I would like to get a little history of the mixers that you also created and the story of a mixer between mono and stereo sound.
In 1965, when I did my early clubs, there were no stereo mixers on the market. Stereo sound came into use in 1957. That's when stereo became popular. Before that it was mono. But from 57 to 65, sound systems were basically about sound reproduction, reinforcement, which means like we're doing now, this microphone is reinforcing my voice. So stereo is not essential. Monophonic works fine. When music reproduction came, sound reproduction, there was a demand for stereo mixing, and nobody made a stereo mixer. So realizing this, I had no choice, but you know, they say necessity is the mother of invention. So I took two little solo phones, what they were called, made by Shure. It was stereo, each one was a little stereo amplifier for headphones, called a solo phone. You stuck a turntable into it, the output of the turntable, you could hear stereophonically what the record was playing. So I bought two of them, one for each turntable. Took the output of those things, and I wired them to a selector switch, which could select between either one, and a mixing pot, mixing two resistors, potentiometers, that could mix the sound from each. And that was the first stereo mixer. And I did that 2 clubs. I had to do it for 2 more clubs because they were still not available. Then I talked to Woody Bozak into making the Bozak mixer.
Yep.
He had a mono 10-channel mic mixer, which was on the market. And I said, you know, if you took this 10-channel mono mixer, you could make it into a 5-channel stereo mixer with very little effort. Wouldn't take much engineering and production. And I see a big demand for this. He said, I don't see any demand at all. I said, because you're not in there. But you ask around, and so he asked his rep, New York rep, whose name I forget, and he confirmed what I said. So he started making the Bozak mixer, and he sent me the production model for testing. I didn't know about testing a thing like this, so what I did is I took a bottle of beer and a bottle of Coca-Cola and I poured it on top. And that was my test. And it withstood the test. I think that's what DJs do in the control room. They drink and they pour, right? It passed the test. I told them, it's reliable, it's great. Build it. And he did.
Why not build one now?
What's that?
Why not build them now? Why not get in that business now and roll the remixers?
There are many people that can do things much better than me. There's no point to it.
Okay.
I only did it because it was essential, it was necessary. Once you build this mixer, this terrific mixer, there's no need to compete.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, so with my guest lessons, I know time might be of the essence inside, of course, outside, from 5 to 10. I hope everyone's able to join us. We're set from Hippie Morales, Duce Martinez, and Martin G. I do have 1 or 2 more questions lined up, so if we have time for that.
Yeah, we have time for 1 or 2 more.
Yeah, let me say up front, man, I cannot miss this. I can't stop crying. Thank y'all for showing up. My second home was Club Denver, where I first learned how to play it. I just wanted to know, what was the one club, your favorite club you ever played at, where you said, yeah, I really made it. I never played Denver ball, but that's how I first learned how to play.
Well, I was lucky. See, what happened was when I came to Newark was already happening. It was already happening. The thing was, I was lucky enough that they accepted me because we were looking for each other. I was looking for an audience that I would love to play with and an audience to accept me. So when I first started playing, we used to do Branch Brook roller skating rink back in '73. That's when we started. And then from there, we started doing Party with Mark Ford Disco. And that was an all 90% black audience. So for some reason, they accepted me and we found each other. So once I got to that point, our next question was, let's get to a place where we can build a club for this. So I got to say my favorite club of all to play at was Doc's. And I'll tell you why, because Doc's was my place. That's right. Doc's was where I created the sound, and that actually became the Jersey sound. See, a lot of people think that people brought the sound to Jersey. No, we created it here already. So when people say, oh, Tony Humphrey brought this, no, Tony Humphrey wanted to play in Zanzibar. Zanzibar was already happening.
Yeah.
Larry Patterson wanted to play in Zanzibar. T. Scott wanted to play in Zanzibar. Oh, why? Because Newark already had that feel and that soul in it. You did not need to put any on it. We just expanded on it. That was it. That was my favorite club.
Question is, it's interesting because all of this kind of synergy together. I'd like to know,
Tom is a producer of remixes, Alan as a producer of sound systems, and even Ray as a producer of music. As the sound system started to get better, how did that affect how you were producing remixes? And then how did that affect how you were producing sound systems? And then ultimately, how did that affect how you were releasing records?
I really can't answer that because I always base my mixes on a little clock radio. And if it sounded great on that, it would be a killer on a big system. Because I always believe being a promotion man, I don't care how big a record gets in a club, it's got to get on radio, you get to the masses. And I always wanted to make sure I had a good radio sounding record. And David Mancuso always said to me, your records always sound the best because when your records are mastered, it's everything I want to hear. And he had no tone controls on any of his, he played it flat from the beginning to the end. And he always complimented me on the way my record sounded.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I use 2 studios in New York for the most part, with some exceptions. Sigma Sound New York and Media Sound. That's where the change out was. A lot of the vocal overdubs was done in Italy, and then they did the vocals here. And I remember an engineer that Tom mentioned it before, Michael Hutchinson, in Sigma Sound. And I know we were doing the remix of Do You Think I'm Sexy with Jim Burgess. And it was important, not just the fact that Rob was trying to, or we wanted to have a major club hit that expanded his market and sold 3 million singles. But it was important that we took that record after we heard it on the big speakers, that Michael had a clock radio, I guess, whatever it was. I forget. What was that? A good sound system that sounded great as a small system?
No, you're talking about the, every studio has a pair of NS10s, and those are called reality speakers. If it sounds good, if you hear bass on an NS10, you have bass on the record. And every studio, believe me, you look for the black box with the white speaker, and that, no matter how impressed you are with the great big ones, those are the 2 speakers that really count.
So at the end of the day, when it sounded good, after hearing it on the big speakers, and we heard it on the small box speakers that Tom's referring to, because he's right. Most of the records, there were a lot of club hits that did well that I had, but obviously the epitome of having a big record, like I'm Every Woman, and Found a Cure, and Peter Brown Dance With Me, and George McRae, these are all records that did well in the clubs. Sam McCoy did well in the clubs, but they all crossed over to the radio. And yes, that was important. And, we didn't really talk about the backlash that happened, in terms of why dance and disco music became so popular that there was, like I talked about earlier, a certain resentment from the traditional R&B departments of how the dance promotion people really had a finger on and the pulse, and then the backlash that happened. But then it continued to grow with house music, and the plot kept moving on forward. And here we have today. Gotta remember that it wasn't disco music per se, it was music that was played in the clubs. So at Warner Brothers, when the backlash happened, Wall Street Journal had an article talked about that disco was dead. I immediately, cosmetically, called the disco department the dance music department. And it's about dance music. I look for hit songs that are dancing, that they're melodic, and that the key to any promotion guy or A&R guy, is it a hit song? Does it have a good hook, chorus, verse? Does it tell a story? And that's as old-fashioned as you can get when it comes to music. The backlash happened, but the fact of the matter is that people are still dancing. It's a whole different scene today, but the reality is that the fundamentals of a great sound system and a good song still prevail.
I'd like to add something to that. Being a former promotion man, radio promotion man, I kind of knew that was going to happen. And how I figured that out, it was like one day in New York when I first moved, I had a bone mill and it was $171. And I looked at my bill and I said, how can I make 40 long distance call within 10 minutes? And they said I had a switchboard in my apartment. And I didn't think much of it. I paid it because I wouldn't change my phone number. Anyway, years later, the same thing happened in another way. With the phone company, you couldn't say, well, go to somebody else, because in those days, there was nobody else. So all of a sudden, you have radio, which no one ever questioned its power. And it really started. Bill Wardlow mentioned to me, he says, Tom, how can Glory Gaynor Never Can Say Goodbye sell 10,000 copies a week without any airplay? So they put a whole page in Billboard and asked why, how a record can do this. And Polydor was so furious because they dropped the record, they stopped working on it. And they really threatened to take away the advertising from Billboard. They were so furious over that. And because of that ad, that one page ad, radio stations started playing Never Can Say Goodbye. Point being, when you have all the power all the time, you just don't assume you have this power. When all of a sudden you lose the power, someone kicked the chair from out on you, you're all, and I said, radio is they're gonna find a way to get back their power. But unfortunately, MTV was starting to kick their ass, so, it didn't all go back to them. But that's what happened. It really, they didn't know how to act when, hey, you gonna play the record or not? That's all right, the clubs will play, we don't need you. And that happened all of a sudden, they didn't like it.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the pioneers. All right, we got some awards for them. I'm just going to read what they basically say, and don't have their name, we fill in their name. That's Pioneer Award for your amazing and unique contributions to the world of dance and music, July 14th, from the city of Newark, New Jersey.
All right.
And thank you all for coming out. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, gentlemen, for giving us the pleasure of hearing you.
Thank you. Hey everyone, it's Alvaro. Just finished an incredible session with some pioneers that have shaped pretty much about every angle that, as a DJ, as a music lover, as someone who's gone to nightclubs, have shaped and formed not only the roots, but what continues to be the disco movement, the discotheques, the amplified sounds, the remixes. Great gathering. I want to say thank you to Hippie Morales, Duce Martinez, and the Newark Library for putting this together. To have Alex Rosner, Tom Moulton, Ray Caviano share some of their history is so vital, because with understanding the history, it allows us to pretty much get a glimpse of the innovative state of mind that they had. Working with DJs that became the trendsetters for what we love doing, like David Mancuso, Larry Levan, having their ideas on how to expand on sound systems, and having the knowledge, like a guy from Alex Rosner to invent something for, for David Mancuso, like the tweeter array, and for it to be, the staple of every big sound system that was in the New York City nightclubs. It just it becomes phenomenal. And to also understand, how he invented a mixer. Yes, it moved over to be the Bozak standard, but for him to think, okay, what does this client want? How do I make things easy to go from this sound to another? Which is almost in the same frame of mind that Tom Moulton approached, his way of creating music, right? Being frustrated from a 3-minute song to saying, I want more. There's certain parts that he loved about the songs, and he talks about his passion on how he worried about, or he took the avenue of what he wanted, what he thought that song should sound like, what he foresaw that song to be remixed or reconstructed is truly incredible. And that takes passion. But I think the theme out of all of them was also being at the right place at the right time. Sometimes you got lucky, and then that luck turned into, a passion, and it grew into other projects. So really incredible. I had a wonderful time again. Just want to thank Hippie and Duce for putting something like this. I hope that this video not only attracts our old heads, the people that have actually experienced it and lived it and had the privilege and honor, to hear Alex's sound systems, to partake in the loft, to listen to a David Mancuso, to hear the magic of Larry Levan, and to understand that all of those three different but together things play a huge role, from a remix of a song to how it sounds amplified in an awesome sound system, to the guy doing the work to get these songs to the DJs, to get inside the booths. That's a job that Ray Caviano played largely in making sure that someone instrumental like Frankie Crocker at BLS took this and took this platform that was so underground in the New York club scenes or in just the nightclubs itself, and become broader and really now get thousands and hundreds of thousands of people to hear and experience what you were having at the nightclub scene. So to me, it's just been incredible. It's been fantastic. Had a wonderful time, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. I'm a big fan of this. I'm very passionate of what I love. Don't forget to follow my YouTube channel, Alvaro MRX Jimenez. Like the video, share it with your friends, and also get an idea of what I do, my involvement in this, my passion for what I love doing. You can catch me on Thursdays on my live Twitch, 8:30 p.m. But yeah, what a wonderful event. They're having the after party now in the Newark Library, but just so blessed to be able to be surrounded by such an incredible pioneers. Oh my God, I'm ready to go home and play the songs and hear them out loud, because that's what brings out. I think that's the love that we have, the infatuation that we all share. So thank you once again to Hippie Morales, Duce Martinez, Newark Public Library. I hope there's more like this for not only us, but the new generation, to understand the true roots, where it all came from, to put the names and the faces together of what they've created. And I'm just so happy and blessed. Have a great day.